The Republican ticket is set as former President Trump chooses Ohio Senator J.D. Vance as his running mate. The former president made his first public appearance since surviving Saturday's assassination attempt, pumping his fist at the Republican National Convention as the crowd cheered. You could see the bandage on his ear as well from the injury he sustained on Saturday. And no doubt many today are wanting to know, who is J.D. Vance? The VP pick rose to fame with his best-selling memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, recounting how he went from growing up in poverty to serving in Iraq to attending Yale Law School. Once an outspoken Trump critic, Vance says he was proven wrong by Trump's performance as president and now credits Trump's support with helping him reach the Senate. Senior national correspondent Terry Moran has more on the vice presidential nominee.
At the Republican convention, it was a moment to remember.
It is now time for us to determine our nominee for the office of Vice President of the United States, Senator J.D. Vance.
Minutes later, it was official. 39-year-old Ohio Senator J.D. Vance is Donald Trump's 2024 running mate. In choosing Vance, Trump looked to the future. Vance is nearly 4 decades younger than Trump. He'd be one of the youngest vice presidents in U.S. history, the first millennial on a presidential ticket. The Trump campaign posting their first ad overnight, featuring Vance praising Trump.
I am proud that I have been an ally of Donald Trump's in Washington, D.C.
It's been a meteoric rise to the highest levels of American politics for J.D. Vance. Born in Middletown, Ohio, just outside Cincinnati, Vance's early life was tough. His family struggling with poverty and drug addiction, which he chronicled in his best-selling 2016 memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, turned into a Netflix adaptation in 2020.
You gotta take care of business, you gotta go to school, you gotta get good grades to even have a chance.
Mom was the best in her class. What's the point?
Vance joined the Marines and served in Iraq, and then went to Yale Law School, later becoming a venture capitalist. The vice presidential nominee once scorned Donald Trump, proudly declaring himself a never-Trumper and calling Trump unfit for the nation's highest office. In 2016, Vance told me he was concerned about a Trump presidency.
If he acts as a president as petulant and as divisive as he's been as a candidate, then I think it's bad for my people.
But when Vance ran for Senate himself in 2022, he was all in. The first line of his first ad, stark proof of his conversion.
Are you a racist? Do you hate Mexicans? The media calls us racist for wanting to build Trump's wall.
Trump campaigned for Vance in 2022.
If you want to save your rights and liberties, you have to start by dealing a humiliating rebuke to the radical left in this election. This is so important, this election. J.D. Vance.
In the 2024 campaign, Vance has been a staunch Trump ally, going after Joe Biden with relish.
We swapped out a guy who has the energy to do the job in Donald Trump with a guy who doesn't, and Americans get an opportunity to make that trade again.
Vance's wife, Usha, is an accomplished attorney. The two met at Yale. Vance telling the New York Times in 2022, she instinctively understood the questions I didn't even know to ask, and she always encouraged me to seek opportunities that I didn't know existed. The couple showed voters a more personal glimpse of their family of 5 during Vance's 2022 Senate campaign.
Our family story is an Ohio story.
I'm J.D. Vance, and I approve this message because our children deserve better.
Senior national correspondent Terry Moran joins me now, along with senior reporter Catherine Falders for more. Terry, you say people around Trump were advocating for Vance until the last minute. How did this all go down, and how instrumental was Donald Trump Jr. in this decision? Because he has said he considers Vance a close friend.
They are friends, Diane, and this was a last-minute decision. So J.D. Vance got the call from Donald Trump just 20 minutes before he announced it to the world on social media, and it was a back-and-forth process. Those 3 finalists, Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, former North Dakota governor Doug Burgum, and then J.D. Vance. And Trump wanted to go the safe route, we're told, Burgum. But his sons, both of them, both Don Jr. and Eric Trump, both were advocating strongly. J.D. Vance, they said, represents the next generation of the movement that Trump has built. And he brings a kind of intellectual approach to making Trumpism into policy. He also brings that Midwestern kind of Rust Belt identity that is going to be so crucial in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania as well. And so at the end, Trump listened to his sons, went with Vance.
Catherine, why pick J.D. Vance over Marco Rubio, Doug Burgum, or any other high-profile Republican, besides the fact that he's friends with your son?
Well, that's a good question, and it was really down to the wire here because Trump really, as Terry mentioned, didn't make that call until nearly 20 minutes before to Vance, and we were hearing still behind the scenes that it could even be somebody else, maybe not even any of those three. So I definitely think, obviously, the influence of Don Jr. surely helped with Trump's decision here, but I think, and at least what I'm hearing from sources, is that Trump does see a lot of Vance as the future of the Republican Party, somebody who's a staunch defender, at least now, of Trump's policies and his movement, if you will. So at the end of the day, that really plays into it here. Of course, the Don Jr. factor came into play. As you know, Trump is influenced by the last person chirping in his ear. So we were hearing even about an hour before that it could be somebody else other than him. But I think he does view it as a future of the Republican Party, a continuation, if you will, of Trump's policies.
And Terry, Vance never held elected office before winning his Senate seat in 2022. He would also, as you mentioned in the piece, be one of the youngest vice presidents in history if they win in November. What are the pros and cons of what that means for the ticket?
Well, the big pro is just the fact that Americans have expressed through polls and otherwise the frustration with looking at two old men, two past generations running for control of the country. J.D. Vance busts that up. He is really the youngest national candidate we've seen, in many, many years, the youngest vice presidential candidate ever. And the downside, is that maybe he's not fully settled yet in his political persona. He was as fiercely anti-Trump as you could get back in 2016 when I interviewed him and then sat next to him in ABC's coverage. He was an ABC consultant, and he hated Trump. And now, he's all in on MAGA, and the possibility that some delegates were raising is, well, is he going to stick? Is that who he really is? Or is he riding Trump's coattails to success in his own political career?
And Catherine, vice presidential nominees are sometimes attack dogs for their running mates on the campaign trail. Donald Trump doesn't necessarily need an attack dog, but what role do you see Vance playing as the campaign heats up?
Well, surely he will play a role of staunch defender of Donald Trump. I know he's said things about him in the past, and he's shifted his view on that. But it's a good question. I'm curious to see the role Vance plays as well. We know, of course, the two will most likely appear for a joint rally together at some point, their first rally since he's been nominated. But again, how many rallies does Vance do? What type of role does he play? At least what I've heard from sources close to Trump is that, again, as you said, he doesn't really need an attack dog, a fierce defender, but surely that is the role he will play out on the campaign trail and, of course, back in the Senate as well.
All right, Catherine Falders, Terry Moran, thank you.